For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and welcome to episode 4 of the Brian Cole story. If you've missed the first 3 episodes, you can find those on our website at DrydenWire.com, on our Facebook page, just DrydenWire's Facebook page, and then, of course, on our YouTube channel. That's probably the easiest and fastest way to do it. Just go to DrydenWire or YouTube and search DrydenWire, or go to youtube.com/DrydenWire. We have a playlist called The Brian Cole Story, where our first 3 are in, and, of course, now this 4th one. Brian, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be here as always.
Yeah, so we've gone through quite a bit in those first 3 episodes. The first one covered from up to 12, childhood to 12. The next one was only 5 years, from 12 to 17. And the last episode was just 1 year, from 17 to 18, and that led to your first prison sentence. Where did we leave off?
Well, we left off with the big federal sting operation, and which left to a whole bunch of charges and sentenced to 9 years, 9 months in prison.
9 years, 9 months, and I think we talked last time you ended up serving the whole time, and you're heading to Green Bay, which that was in the previous episode, about the significance of that. So at this point, I think we did leave off with, we didn't know anything. You weren't at a spot yet, but you were heading to Dodge. Was that it?
Yep.
So
yeah, everybody goes to Dodge Correctional Institution first. That's the intake prison. Back in those days, you were there for about 3 months or so. Nowadays, you're there for a long time. But so yeah, on my way to Dodge Correctional Institution, and really, really salty, even saltier matter at just people in general. People in power in general. I saw the whole sting operation as a setup. They turned me into a burglar. I had never been a burglar before, and so it was all their fault, right?
Of course.
So yeah, authority. This was really where my focus on my hatred for authority really grew inside of myself, like a demon itself. And so I got to Dodge, and I was there for, approximately 3-4 months, and then I found out I was being shipped to Green Bay, and there we go. There we start my time.
So you get to Green Bay, and I don't know, first of all, just out of curiosity, what was the kind of the difference between Dodge and Green Bay? Not
a lot.
Okay, so they're basically the exact same thing, right? I mean, not exact same, but there was a difference, that one was a lot, I don't know, easier or whatever that would be. But it's pretty much the same thing, just a different location.
Yeah, it was the same thing, except once you're in a regular institution, you get to do more things. They didn't have you couldn't get out a lot for library and hobby and rec and all that kind of stuff. You did, but not much. And
okay.
So you were locked down. The first 3 days you're there, you're completely locked down. You don't get out at all, and then eventually get transferred to a housing unit. And here was my initiation into prison. Went from my 3-day lockdown into my housing unit, and the other bed was empty. And I was getting a new roommate that day, and this big, huge, giant black guy comes in. And, it didn't occur to me at that time that, because I never lived with anybody like that people who are bigger have a tendency to snore and snore loud. And
my wife can attest to that because of me. Yes.
Oh, man, this guy could snore, man. I couldn't get no sleep. That's when I eventually got back on my medications so I could sleep at night. So that was my initiation. Yeah, sure. It was not good.
So at any point in here, you're a big tough guy, right?
Yes.
So are you, really when you get there, is it I am a big tough guy? Or is it, okay, I am a pilgrim in an unholy land? I can't be tough here. They're way tougher than I am.
No, you had to learn to stand up for yourself. This is why there's so many gangs and stuff in prison, because people feel like they need to be part of something to survive prison. But Wisconsin isn't like a lot of other states. I call Wisconsin prisons kiddie camps compared to real prisons in other states. You don't really have to fear for your life every day and all that. Yeah, there's garbage going on. There's gangbang going on. The guards don't tolerate that, but it's still there. And but yeah, right away, I went into the system, and people. This is really when the Satanism picked up from something that I just kind of dabbled in, didn't really think about, to now it was all that was on my mind. And I instantly, I got a catalog from somebody else that was involved with the occult and started ordering books on Satanism, and found they sold this, actually a contract to sell your soul to the devil. I remember buying that and signing off my soul to Beelzebub, buying all kinds of books on Satanism and the occult. And this is when I got transferred to Green Bay, and there wasn't really a limit on how many books or what kind of books you could have, as long as it wasn't about escaping and all that. So I was collecting almost immediately a vast library on Satanism and the occult. Originally it was the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Rituals book from Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, but started getting into that, but it was too mellow for me. So I found out about this guy, Reverend Nemolos, who used to be part of the Church of Satan, but he took himself away from that because, like with me, it was too mellow and he wanted to get deeper into it. So I started reading his stuff and eventually got into the Necronomicon and all this other really deep satanic stuff. I was constantly cutting myself. Matter of fact, that first bit that I did, I think in 10 years, I had about 180 contact reports. Probably a better part of them was for self-mutilation, is what they called it. When they catch me cutting myself or see marks on my body. After a while, they were looking for it. I wasn't going to.
Why were you doing that?
For blood, for rituals that I was doing.
Okay.
So one of the other things, they had a hobby place there. You could go and do different hobby projects. Again, back then when we still had privileges. So I got into candle making. And it was really funny because the first couple times I made candles, this hobby unit was away from the two cell halls. There was like a cell hall on each side of this rotunda. And in the middle of this rotunda down the hall was the hobby shop. And I'd make my candles and I'd put different scents in the wax when I was baking the wax. And this would just go right out into the rotunda and into the housing unit. So pretty much got known when people started smelling, Ozzy's in there making candles again. And, some people liked it, some did not, but they never really put a stop to it. Also, it was at this time I tried going to the chapel to be able to practice my rituals in, so I'd have room, because, you got dinky little rooms and you're usually in with a roommate. And they wouldn't let me do it. And I was like, well, wait a minute. You guys are letting the Christians and the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Buddhists and the Muslims and everybody else do the thing in here. Why not us? So this right away was when I started going against the Department of Corrections and trying to get a Wiccan pagan religious group started, which ended up being about a 6-year battle. And I'll get to how that developed. But for 6 years, I fought that. I did not let it go. I was filing ICIs or inmate complaints against everything they did to me, and ended up being transferred to a lot of different institutions after that, because they were thinking if they shipped me somewhere else, I'd stop.
Right.
I was trying to get this going institution wide. So.
Okay, so we're back. We had to take a quick break there for a second. We're having some audio and some video issues. We think we have those fixed. So, all right, we're back. Brian, you were talking about Wiccan, right?
Yep, we're talking about setting up Wiccan pagan religious groups in the chapels. I fought the system for about 6.5 years over that.
Okay, so how did that? I mean, is this at this point? Is it your passion or is it boredom?
No, it was passion and it was determination. I was determined to win. One of the things that I realized that the devil, the demons gave me right away was power and authority. I had a lot of influence all of a sudden. I had a lot of power. People were afraid of me even more than going back to the childhood, the bullies and all that. So the demons were giving me things almost immediately, and I was realizing this. So I was moving forward with that power and authority. And I remember I did a lot of destruction rituals against people. It got to the point where it got so well known. People were coming and actually paying me canteen to put destruction curses on people. um, so yeah, I started at that time. Also, I started writing people, talking about this fake satanic temple that I had kind of going in the prison. Obviously, you can't have a satanic temple, but telling them, here's who I am. I'm a high priest and all this and that kind of stuff. And people started sending me money. I even had a guy from the military was sending me a pretty good amount of money every month just to support me. I started finding out about, because I said one of the things I always loved was animals, and I started getting these animal activist magazines and newspapers, and I started writing these people. And pretty soon, the enemy's like, tell them lies, tell them you did this and that, tell them you set mink free and all this, and they'll send you money. So I did that and put myself out there as someone who went out and set thousands of mink free off a mink farm, and all of a sudden I was getting just a huge inpouring of mail with money. And so all this money and stuff was coming into me, and again, just the power. And this was also the point where I found out about this game called Dungeons and Dragons, and I started playing that. That was one of the few things that even back then they really didn't allow too much in for some reason. But of course, you always find ways to get stuff in, and I'd make notes and stuff like that, and started really playing this game hardcore. And after a while there, even the guards were scared of me a little bit. One day I came back from lunch, and the guards had put some chicken bones on strings up on my cell bars, and I walked out there because the only ones that could have done it was them, because everybody else really was at chow. And I walked up the desk and threw these chicken bones down, and like, you guys think this is funny? Keep playing, and I walked away, and they never really messed with me too much after that. So that's what I remember really of just the growth. And all I had, when you're in max like that, you're locked in pretty much 23 or so hours of the day. You get out, once 3 times a week for your showers. You shower with 28 other guys at a time in a big room. You get out for chow unless you're locked in your room for some reason. You can go to hobby. You can get a job. Most of the time I was there, I had a janitorial job. They call it a swamper. Which was my favorite job because, each shift you were out of your room. Your room was open, and you had there was 4 tiers high, 28 rooms on each tier, both sides. So you were a caretaker of one tier. So here you are the only one out. So you're the guy people are paying to pass things around and pass drugs. And so you had influence, you had power there. And even though it wasn't a good paying job, there was a lot of potential there for making good money from passing things for people. So that was my first about 3 years there at Green Bay.
I want to circle back to Dungeons and Dragons. So my mother, as you know very well, Diane Dryden. When I was a kid, we were raised in a Christian home, and there were things that we were raised with that were kind of like how they were raised. Like, Christians didn't go to movie theaters, so we couldn't go to a movie theater. Couldn't play cards. Actually, I don't know if that was like a Christian thing. It was just more didn't want to incorporate something that could potentially lead to, gambling addictions, etc. Dungeons and Dragons. My friends played that, and Mom wouldn't let me. And for the first time, I could say, I'm sorry, Mom, you're right. If Brian Cole is playing Dungeons and Dragons in prison to get closer to Satan, maybe she was out of something there. So what was the allure? I've never actually played it because Mom wouldn't let me. But again, now I see her wisdom, as most children do as they get older. What was it about that game was it just actually, hey man, we would have played checkers if that was available. What was it about Dungeons and Dragons?
Basically to start out with, it was just something to do, man. It passed a lot of time. I mean,
Sure. Okay.
When you play the actual role-playing game of Dungeons and Dragons, not on video or nothing like that, it really puts your mind to use, and it takes up a lot of time, especially if you're what they call a dungeon master, the one that runs the game. You have so much preparation to do. Even out on the streets, when I played on the streets after my first release, playing a couple of guys up in Rice Lake, and it would take me probably 3 days to prepare a game for that weekend, because
Wow.
you just never know what people are going to do and which way they're going to go. And so you have to get this whole thing set up. Eventually, by the time my first 10-year bit was over, I created 13 different worlds and kind of used a type of Doctor Who stuff in there where there were Time Lords and time warps into different worlds and all this and that kind of stuff. So eventually it led into just another form of escapism, really. My mind wasn't in prison. I wasn't there. My focus was on something else and totally far away from the reality of being in prison. And the other thing that was influential to me in the game is you can play it any way, but the way I ran things pretty much was evil characters and demons and stuff like that. So,
okay. So you were kind of identifying with some of that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, we were.
Okay. So this was, you had just mentioned about 3 years. So was there anything else in that first, I mean, you were there for almost 10 years. We're not going to be able to get through, I don't think, 10 years in one episode. Yeah. So anything else happening in that first 3 years? Are you a part of, other stuff that is happening there? Are you kind of on your own, or other people following you? How does that work those first few years?
Yeah, I was pretty much a loner. It's one of the things in the Wisconsin prison. If you just fly by yourself, basically, and mind your own business and don't get involved with the gambling and all the other junk that goes on in there, you ain't really going to have a problem. I pretty much kind of got along with everybody. People respected me. They respected and feared what I was into. Yeah, of course, during that whole time, I was making disciples for Satan and training and equipping people in the occult. Basically, I was spending most of my time reading and memorizing rituals, and that was just my life there in Green Bay for that first 3 years.
And you say you were a loner, but you also are saying that you were getting essentially like disciples, or excuse me, training in a way, right?
Yeah.
Did you get? How many people do you think that you influenced or impacted with, like your disciples, or people that you are changing their lives and kind of having them understand or see what you are into, and they're now starting to get into it?
Oh, for sure, a couple dozen during that first
Holy
3
cow.
years. It definitely had a following, yeah.
Bizarre. Again, I don't know prison life, so part of this is just I'm fascinated by that, and I don't want to go and find out myself. So I figured I'll just ask you.
And I only got into one fight my whole first bit.
That was actually the next thing I was going to ask.
Yeah. So the guy, Scott, I was telling you about that, me and him did all these crimes together, and he lived with me and my wife. We were in there together, and we were up in one of the hobby or the recreation areas inside up on the second floor, and they had a couple pool tables in there. And some guy was smarting off to Scott, and you just don't mess with my friends, man. And I told the guy to knock it off, and he didn't. So I clocked him upside the head with the pool stick, and he punched me, and that was that. We both walked away from it, because if you get into a fight, you're pretty much going to the hole for a year. So
really,
neither one of us really wanted to get caught, I think. But that was the only time I really ever got into a scuffle my first year or my first bit.
You just brought up, and I didn't even think about it till now. Where is your wife during all of this?
Yeah, I suppose I should have brought that up. So
think about it until now.
Yeah, the first 6 months I was in, I found out that she was sleeping with my cousin, one of my cousins, and so I filed for a divorce, and that was that.
Out of curiosity, was there any other contact with her in any way in your first 10 years there?
Nope.
I know we're jumping ahead, but just out of curiosity as well, have you talked to her since at any point?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because it probably wouldn't have got brought up. But yeah, just a few years, probably 8 or 9 years ago, she reached out to me on Facebook. And so I friended her, and we talked a little bit, just not about yonder days, but how our lives are right now. And I told my wife about it, and I don't know, a couple of weeks after that, my wife's like, "I don't want you talking to her anymore."
I totally get that.
So I did. I said, I don't agree with that, but I will do it.
You honor your wife. Oh, good man. I'm serious. Yep. And that's not even necessarily good man. That's a spousal thing. Right.
Yeah.
It's not about if your wife asks, if your husband asks, same thing. It's a respect thing.
Respect and boundaries.
Yeah, you bet. And but to kind of put a bow on that, I guess,
Yeah.
How was she doing when you last talked to her?
She seemed to be doing all right.
Okay. Okay, so back to prison.
Yeah.
You're I don't know,
So here's
3
where-
or so.
Yep, 3 years in, a little bit more than 3 years, and I get a transfer. Both me and Scott transferred to Keller Marine Correctional Institution, which is a medium prison. Now Green Bay is max, so we both got transferred to Keller Marine, and this is where there was a lot that happened. And we'll probably end with the whole KMCI thing. So just deeper and deeper and deeper into the darkness and into Satanism, and they had a big print shop there. I ended up discipling one of the guys that worked in the print shop, and he turned his soul over to Satan too, and he ended up being one of my followers. So I started having him make up an actual newsletter for me for this make-believe satanic temple.
See, you're an entrepreneur. You have an entrepreneurial spirit in you. See, look at a positive.
Well, no, the enemy gave me those skills, man.
Okay.
You worked it all out. So I have this newsletter going out to people now, and I'm making all these plans for the satanic temple I'm going to build when I get out. And I just have binders full of stuff, and again, there really wasn't a lot of rules back then about things, and I got away with a lot. It got to the point where one day I had to do this ritual, big ritual, and in order to do the ritual, you had to cut my hair like yours, all the way bald, and you had to have a goatee. Now, if you knew how prideful I was of my long hair, you'd know what it took to do this. So I shaved my head, and I shaved my beard down to a goatee, and did this big ritual, and it just seemed like the power got even greater and greater in me after that. The following I was getting was bigger. And then one day, and this is where everything started changing, one day Scott, my friend, came to me, and he said, "Man, Ozzy, I say Ozzy because this is what everybody knew me by. It's a name I went by. Ozzy, you're getting a little too deep into this stuff, man. I'm worried about you." And I said to him without even hesitation, "Dude, if Beelzebub came to me today and told me I had to sacrifice my own mother, I wouldn't even hesitate." He turned around and walked away and never talked to me again, and I haven't heard from Scott since that day. But
that's a smart move on Scott's part.
yeah, I went back to my room that night, and because my mom was one of the only people I loved in life, it really hit me hard about what I said. I said what I said without thinking. And when I got back to my room, I thought about it. Now, I want to say this too, that I kept journals every day, ritual journals and dream journals, and just all that was going on in my life. And I destroyed almost all my stuff after I came to Christ and got baptized, but I did keep one journal. And you could see in my journals that, especially after got deeper and got into Crowleyism, all the stuff I'll get into, that there were different aspects to me. I had different personalities. You could tell the demonized personalities because there was always this Brian part. I hated that name. Let me say this, that there was, I wasn't a face-to-face guy too much. It wasn't much you could do to me to get me to go off on you and fight physically. I'll get back at you one way or another in the future, but one way you could get at me was call me by my first name, and because it was a God-given name by my parents. And the only person that could get away with calling me that was my mom.
Is your mom.
So I love my mom deeply, and there was these different personalities in me. And going through my journals, you could see that there were times, and I think this is one of the times where the Brian personality would come out and understand momentarily that the things I was involved with was not okay, and I wanted out. But that did not last long. But I had that night after I said that to Scott, and I'm like, man, this is too much. These demons got control over me. I was supposed to have the control. I don't like this. And this is when I had been reading so many different kinds of occult books, and a lot of those were by a guy named Aleister Crowley. And so this was kind of a transition where I went from believing the lie of the enemy that I'm no longer going to be involved with Satanism. I'm going to go and get into Crowleyism, where I have control, yeah, right, over the demons and spirits, and they don't have control over me.
Sure.
And so this is where it slowly went from me getting out of Satanism a little bit at a time and starting to get more into Crowleyism and Thelema and the OTO and stuff like that. So while that was going on, I'm still in the process of this battle with getting the Wiccan pagan religious groups going on. And one day at Christmas, the Christians had all their little Christian stuff up all over the place. So I went to the guard in the booth and I said, "Hey, I want to put something up too." And they're like, "Yeah, well, do what you want to do, and then show it to me." So I drew up this pentagram with a wreath around it, and it said, "Blessed be," and all that kind of stuff. And I showed it to him. He goes, "Yeah, that's cool. Put it up." And I put it up. And later on that night, man, the popo all came up in my room and grabbed me up and threw me in the hole. I'm like, "What the heck is going on?" "Well, you put this satanic stuff up on the wall." I'm like, "Hey, your officer gave me permission to do that." And so what ended up developing out of that was I got a huge conduct report, or a ticket is what you call it.
Oh.
And it was like 6 pages long, and they had probably 12 different charges. And what they did is they started taking all my occult books. An example, the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft and Demonology, which had come in, they approved it, they gave it to me, and now they'd go in there and say, the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft and Demonology, so it'll give you, this person did this and this person did that. So by saying that in the book, they're saying that I was going to do that. So they started putting all these conspiracy things on me that I conspired to sacrifice people and all this kind of junk. So yeah, my hatred for authority grew. I ended up getting a whole lot of whole time out of that.
How much?
They shipped me back to Green Bay Correctional Institution. I did my whole time there, and that's where we'll drop it off here today.
Okay, how much time were you in the, as you would call it, the hole for that?
Yeah, it was probably about close to a year. Yeah, maybe about 8 months. I ended up doing over that.
Okay, I want to just quickly go back to, you had said that one night you went back to your cell after saying what you said about your mother, and you had this moment of you were Brian. Were you emotional? Were you in a tear state, or is it more of just like my brain, or is it in your heart? What was that feeling, or was it just a thought, not a feeling?
Yeah, I think it was probably just a thought. Like, man, what I did was wrong.
Okay.
And why would I ever have thoughts like that about my mom? And that's when it came to the whole point of they're controlling me, and I don't like this anymore. I need to have control over them.
Looking back at it now, was that God or no?
I believe it was.
Feel like kind of. But that's outside looking in. I don't know what it was like for you. Obviously, you don't recognize it at the time. I just didn't know if that's something you've kind of thought about since. Because let's face it, that's oftentimes how things work, right?
Yeah.
We've got just little thoughts here and there.
Yeah.
So what is your biggest takeaway from this first period, and what should other people take away from this first part of your first prison sentence?
Yeah, well, I think there's probably a couple. One of those is just influence, and who you let into your life to influence you, because who you let into life isn't just people, man. It's spirits, whether it's demonic spirits or angelic spirits. And obviously I had the wrong kind of people in my life. But the other part of that is just, let's start getting into the deep stuff. Because this is where the lies of the enemy is so powerful and so believable that we think it true, because there's so many people that are deceived out here, like I was, believing that whether it's New Age stuff or, Buddhism or white magic or white Wicca or Earth Wicca stuff or whatever it might be, that, there's nothing inherently wrong with this stuff. It's actually pretty good, right? And we're not doing bad things, and we don't worship the devil, and that's a lie. because, whether you believe it or not, there is only two options, and that is God and the devil. And you are either on one path or the other. And if you are not progressively moving toward God, you are progressively moving toward the enemy. And however, the Bible tells us that the devil comes, right, clothed like the angels. I mean, he makes himself look good. So these lies that we tell ourselves that the enemy has influenced us with, that, well, this is all good stuff. You're not doing anything. We're not hurting anybody. It's not about blood. It's not about the devil. It is. If it isn't about God, it's about the devil, no matter how you look at it. Listen, man, the enemy only comes to do three things, right? Steal, kill, and destroy. He wants to steal your life. He wants to kill you. He wants to destroy you. He is a liar, the Bible says, and he has had thousands of years of experience. He is very good at what he does. And if he can make you think that what you're doing is okay, hey, you go ahead and believe that lie like I did. But I guarantee you are headed for the lake of fire, man, and you don't want to go there.
And lately, it's that doesn't exist. There was that line. One of my favorite lines in a movie is from The Usual Suspects. And obviously, this was referencing something else, but it was the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. And I think that we see a lot of that in today's world, where there's a God and there's a Satan. But it's actually, you know what? No, there just isn't one. Yeah. And he's kind of getting away with that lately. Yeah. Just saying.
As a matter of fact,
I look at the world, man.
When I first came to Drummond, within the first couple of months, a guy pulls up in the driveway and comes in. He's clothed like a Catholic father, and indeed he was a Catholic father. And he had come down from Hayward, and he sat down and he's like, "Yeah, I heard about you were here, and I heard a little bit of your story, and I was wondering if we could have you come and speak at our church there, that our we have so many people that just don't believe in the devil anymore, and we need to get that thought out of their head. Would you come and speak?" And I ended up going there, and there were 3 other churches involved, and we had quite the crew in there. But
yeah, so I struggle with, and I think I can speak for my wife too, and we talk with this on our Sunday morning Bible studies that Mom comes over and with our family, where it's the fire and brimstone God or the kind and loving God.
Yeah.
It's
one extreme
or the
struggle,
other. But it's reading this thing, Mom had sent us this video, and it was talking about how God is, most of us just put God as just a little bit better version of us. And that's not really how it works.
No.
That's
part of the problem in the church today. It's one extreme or the other. It's either evil doesn't exist, the devil doesn't exist, or everything is the devil.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like I feel like they're just totally separated, two ends of this of the spectrum. All right. Well, we are at our time, and next week we'll pick up. Any preview for next show, episode 5, where we're going to be going on that? Obviously, the rest of your time in your first prison sentence, but anything noteworthy that we should, kind of little tease?
Yeah, I don't know. Just kind of in that process of getting out of Satanism and getting into all these other aspects of the occult and stuff. And there's an escape in the future here. I escaped from a prison, so there is that to look forward to.
I thought you meant metaphorically.
No, I escaped from a prison.
What?
I wasn't a good guy, dude.
What?
Come on. And it ain't like you think. It wasn't like out of a maximum security prison.
No. Totally is exactly what I think. Away. Let me just give me this for the next week, right?
Okay, I escaped from prison.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll chat with you next week. Any last words?
No, just I love you, brother. Thanks for this opportunity, and I hope everybody out there again doesn't see this as a glorifying my past. Just knowing how deep a person can get into stuff, that there's always hope through Jesus Christ.
Amen to that. I love you too, man. We'll see you next week.